Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. I'm Johnny Venerable. He's Bo Brock at the PHNX headquarters in downtown Phoenix. Damien Anderson joining us as well. We're fired up. Maybe not to talk about the end result of yesterday's bloodbath in Denver, folks, but we're fired up nonetheless to talk about the ongoing change that could be coming to the Arizona Cardinals. And gentlemen, we start with the general manager, Steve Keim. We talked about it yesterday on the post-game show, the PHNX tailgate show. Jonathan Jones reporting, likely out is Steve Keim. So Bo Brock, we thought we'd kick off today with who is the best option, internal and external, to replace the infamous general manager.
It's beautiful. I think it was maybe kind of a storyline that we couldn't give as much attention as we wanted to, but it seems like it's happening. Ding dong, Steve Keim is gone. We see sad face Steve in the chat saying, hey, everybody, hopefully we can turn that frown upside down with some of our candidates. What's up, Isaiah? What's going on, everybody? We're pumped to maybe unveil some big time, I guess, change makers for the Arizona Cardinals, some guys that can make an impact as far as this slumping organization and kind of take them back out from the bottom of the NFC West and kind of recalibrate things and get them back on the right track. But it's an exciting day. I was out there at the facility today. We heard from Cliff Kingsbury. Of course, he's mostly talking about, what we had to watch on Sunday.
Yeah,
another frustrating loss, another quarterback down, kind of giving us the state of the roster that was already sad affairs. But here we are kind of breathing life here at PHNX Cardinals into this fan base, thinking about change and what's possible, Damien.
Yeah, guys. I mean, so many questions, very little answers. And I mean, if you look at what they've done over the years, right? We go from Ferguson, we go to Keim, or not even Keim. Before him, you go to Rod Graves, then to Keim. These are all been internal hires, and we know that they have an affinity for Adrian Wilson in the Ring of Honor and what he's done on the playing football field. But does that translate? I mean, I've played with he as well as Quentin Harris, and I think they're both great guys and both think that they, go about their homework and preparation, due diligence in a great way. But is it going to be enough? And we've talked about this being a culture change. Are they going to have to do a full reset and make those changes, obviously with the general manager, but with the head coach as well? And guys, I really don't have the answers, but I just know that do I feel confident that the team will be in better hands with Adrian Wilson or Quentin Harris? I just think that everyone is bracing a new start, right? And I think with new start comes new philosophy. And I guarantee you, as I said, with any job, right, there's going to be a point of contact, the person decision maker, that being Steve Keim. And whoever gets elevated to that position will have their own philosophy and ideology of how they go about things.
Sean Marks, our guy in the super chat. Thank you so much. $4.99. Can we get a relative of K. Dilly to come to the Cards? My man out here making moves to make ASU relevant. We need that for the Cards. I think it's good mojo that we got ASU, doing what they can in the offseason, pivoted right to Arizona, the Arizona Cardinals, hopefully come January. So I don't know any relatives of Dilly. And I don't know if we want to go that route anyway. We want to keep it external, even if they go internal. And I say that with full respect and admiration for Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson. I think that and we talked about this yesterday, if the end game leads the Arizona Cardinals to hiring one or the other, Quentin Harris or Adrian Wilson, then so be it. But what we want to see in between that time, gentlemen, is interviews, in-depth process and analysis by Michael Bidwell. So if he interviews a Louis Riddick or a Jeff Ireland or a JoJo Wooden or somebody like that, which we're going to talk about all of them today, okay, you have to be convinced that they are less qualified or a lesser fit than Adrian Wilson or Quentin Harris. And if you come up with that decision, Michael Bidwell, we will embrace it, we will support it, and we will give either Quentin Harris or Adrian Wilson their opportunity. Absolutely. I don't think anybody on here, although we feel like an external may be the best route to go, is going to rain on a parade of Adrian Wilson should he get this GM job, because we honestly don't know. You don't know until the guy, Bo Brock, starts making selections, starts signing free agents. What I will say is this. The culture is so broken right now that you look at the on-the-field product is almost secondary. And we talked about it on the postgame show yesterday. It's not like when Michael Bidwell fired Rod Graves and Ken Wisenhunt. And you could say, well, the on-the-field product isn't good enough. We're going to go with Steve Keim internal. He's well thought of, blah, blah, blah. Yes, Adrian Wilson and Quentin Harris are well thought of. They've gotten interviews already. A-Dub almost got the GM job in Jacksonville last year.
Mm-hmm.
But to have somebody promoted within that building where all of this other stuff is going on, man, that you better be convinced that these guys are going to be the solution and not a continuation of the problem.
I understand that the hesitancy, obviously, with the fan base wanting a departure from, as DA pointed out, 3 decades nearly of going with internal candidates, and just looking at how things have played out. It's like, hey, we need some fresh blood. We need some fresh eyes on this in some capacity. If it's Quentin Harris, who DA said is more of an analytical approach, and then you've got, Adrian Wilson, who brings a background of scouting, obviously his playing days. He had a cup of coffee in New England. That always goes far as people kind of that being on your resume is impressive, even though A-Dub didn't really play a regular season down for Bill Belichick. They're both impressive resumes, but I would hope that they're going to bring in some outside sources, whether it's the player personnel department, whether it's the scouting department, whatever it may be. There's got to be fresh blood, but it's also exciting to look at some candidates from some organizations over the last decade to half a decade that have been in the consistently in the mix as far as competing for Super Bowls, annual trips to the playoffs. That's what you want to see in an organization now that has locked up its 3rd double-digit loss season in its last 5.
Guys, and you want to see aggressiveness too in free agency. I mean, we've talked about this offense having, all the bells and whistles that they've needed. I think in that respect, Steve Keim, maybe without addressing the offensive line, did everything that he needed to do in terms of getting Cliff Kingsbury the best groceries to cook with, right? You got Kyler Murray, you have a plethora of receivers, you re-sign your running back, and you have a tight end. So the offense is supposed to I don't think that's a Steve Keim issue, right, guys? But defensively, we talked about you lose Chandler Jones. You need these key pieces to combat the war of attrition that is the National Football League, where you see teams going to the latter part of the season, like a San Francisco 49ers, who's built on a running game and who's built on a defense. I think whoever this candidate is, whoever this general manager in the future is going to be, is look at that. Look at the season that which the National Football League, NFL season, and have guys have that depth and be able to identify the need that, hey, you just can't be one-sided. You have to be a complete football team. And whether it's, Adrian Wilson, whether it's Quentin Harris or a third party, these are all the things that need to be evaluated in this decision-making process.
I also think we need to leverage relationships around the NFL, and the GM needs to have a full tree of people to get in contact with. Yeah. And we saw Steve Keim begin to falter with relationships around the NFL. And Bo, you brought this up when he lost Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians had a direct pipeline to both coaches and players that wanted to come to Arizona and play for him. And that's a coup for Keim. You hired Bruce Arians. You should get rewarded for that. But if you hire Adrian Wilson or Quentin Harris, you have to be certain that they can go out and they can recruit quality coaches and coordinators and position coaches and then go into free agency. Yes, you want to pay people, but at the same time, there are 1 to 2 year deals out there to be had. You have to be able to meticulously go through the offseason and say, I'm going to leverage my contacts. Do we know the kind of relationships A-Dub and Quentin Harris have? We don't. But I could look at somebody like Louis Riddick, or I could look at somebody like, I don't know, Joe Horowitz, the Ravens director of player personnel, and say, okay, they have a good culture there. He's going to get people to want to come and play for the Arizona Cardinals because they know the kind of person he is. You look at somebody like Jeff Ireland, Saints assistant GM. They've had a really good track record of drafting and developing. And of course, the sub bullet is could that get you Sean Payton? I mean, the GM, it's more, Bo, than just I'm picking X player in X round. There's so much more to it that I think Keim, unfortunately, has just failed time and time again since losing Bruce Arians. Yeah,
and when you looked at even the BA era, there was zero contingency plan for the quarterback room, right? Zero. There was no plan for that. They drafted 1 quarterback during BA's stint, and now he's playing tight end. You watch him play on Sunday Night Football for Washington, Logan Thomas. Great tight end, not a great quarterback. What was he, 1 for 8 passing? He had that one miraculous touchdown in Denver, ironically enough, in his career. But look, whoever it is has to have vision, because I feel like this team, when we talk about a lack of contingency plans for most positions, like it lacked vision. It lacked planning for the future. It was so year to year. Like, I really feel like there was no plan in place, 5-year plan for this organization. It's like, hey, we're going to manipulate the cap this year to fit Kyler's contract, or we're going to fit it to where we can spend money, or we can work on the draft, or this is where we need to build in the draft. I felt like they were just kind of flying by the seat of their pants far too often. Like, even when it came to coaching hires, it was when it involved Steve Keim, it seemed like they were dragging their feet on these things where it's the most important move for the franchise at that moment. And it's going to impact whether or not you're successful over the next couple seasons. I don't think that the previous regime with Steve Keim understood that. And I hope that going forward, whoever it may, whether it's Quentin Harris or Adrian Wilson, the internal candidates, or it's an external candidate, understands that in a cap league and where draft capital is so important, that they have a future plan for all of your assets.
Guys, I could see that happening. I could see them doing a full reset, given the embarrassment of this season due to the coaching, due to the lack of performance on the football field, and the ineffectiveness of all these changes that have made over call it 3 to 5 year span. I mean, I know that you could pick out some pieces of, the offense show progression over the initial 3 years with Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. But I think, Bo, to your point, the fact that you haven't had that depth, you haven't had the ability to be competitive. You've dealt with these injuries, and it's just a steep fall off. And not to have that, I think Michael is in a situation where Bo, he's evaluating all the circumstances. He's trying to figure out, hey, is Adrian the best decision for us to make, or do we really need to get another third party, come from the outside, take a macro look, and start evaluating and putting the best product on the football field? Because I think that given those guys with familiarity, you tend to do the same things, and Michael tends to have that relationship and that maybe that influence, where with a third party external candidate, there wouldn't necessarily be that influence, because he would give him that power when he takes on that position.
It always just makes me a little worried too, because will Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson be objective with Michael Bidwell? I hope so. Right. I hope so during these final 3 weeks and then potentially into next year. But they've been under Michael Bidwell for some time now, especially Adrian Wilson. He's got a relationship with Michael and Steve. I don't think he would carry the baton of sorts. But
can I push back? Can I immediately push back on that? Because I don't
know. Can you?
Not strike me as somebody that's just isn't.
But when
genuine.
He's paying your bills is different, though.
Well, yeah.
I mean, when he's paying, that's how I feel. Like when you have a person of that influence and he's paying your bills, I think regardless, A-Dub, Quentin, Steve Keim can come with all the analytical data that they want, right? Doing their due diligence. At the end of the day, it's Michael's decision.
And for sure. But for lack of, he keeps it real. I mean, A-Dub is one of the realest guys in that building.
But it's the only franchise he ever played for outside of a stint in New England. It's the franchise that helped make him an icon here and nationally, right? They drafted him out of NC State. I mean, it's just, I worried that there sometimes might be too much of, I don't want to say common ground, but there's too much comfort there. And this franchise needs to get uncomfortable. And here's another point I want to make. And I am not calling Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson losers. But what I will say is they're part of a losing organization right now. What did Michael Bidwell do in 2018? He kept Steve Keim, who was a losing GM, and he went and hired a losing college coach. What did he do in 2013? He hired a winner, Bruce Arians.
Now hold on. To be fair, Steve Keim at that point in his career, he was not a losing GM. I mean, he was
we were seeing though after the Wilkes year, saw the cracks.
And I don't disagree.
But he was part of Wisenhunt. He was part of getting to the Super Bowl. He was part of that.
I think we saw the gloss come off because Bruce Arians had gone. And the point I'm trying to make here is go out and hire people who know how to build a winner.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson can't do that, but they've been here. They're part of this infrastructure right now. They're vice presidents. They're not janitors. They're not like middle management. They're not analysts. They are vice presidents. Now, you could argue, and we're not in the building, how much weight does that have under Michael Bidwell and Steve Keim? It could have a lot. It could have a little, right? But I would go and I'd say, well, the Chargers draft really well. Go look at their vice president of player personnel, or steal some people from Kansas City or from Buffalo. These teams that win year after year. I appreciate wanting to take care of your own and promote from within, But I'm sorry, I've seen that, and then I've seen an extension of that, hire coaches that have never won before. Steve Wilkes had no track record, and Cliff Kingsbury, and I defended him up until this year, had never won consistently. So, like, I'm okay. I don't want the franchise to fail, but I'm okay taking big swings with guys who are part of a winning culture, because that tells me that you've identified that what you do doesn't work. We're going to copy that. Look what the New York Giants are doing. They shit the bed time and time again. They finally just said, we're just going to go get the guy who's made Josh Allen a winner, and we're going to take him. And look, he's the coach of the year this year. New GM, new head coach. What did Minnesota do? New head coach, new general manager. And they've both turned around their franchises. Michael Bidwell needs to take note of that.
So who do we have? Who do you guys see externally as potential guys that could lead this team almost out of the cellar of the NFC West, back to contending for playoff spots and really tapping into Kyler Murray, surrounding him with the proper personnel to be successful?
Damien, you want to kick us off?
I'll kick it off. Obviously, if we're going external, I like Horowitz, Johnny, from what what you've prepared, and the reason why is if you look at their history, look at their ability to draft, identify free agent talent, and just be competitive over the years. Right, that being the Baltimore Ravens, they've adjusted their system to their quarterback to make it more player friendly, and I think that when you're able to do that, and you get coaches that can identify a player's strengths rather than I would say keeping them off the field due to their weaknesses, right? And they get coaches and players that work together. They have a strong history of doing that and being successful. And to me, that makes the most sense. And they've drafted unbelievably over the years.
I'll do a big sub bullet. Arizona Animals point. If Sean Payton wants to come here, you let him pick his GM. Let's be clear on that. Same with Jim Harbaugh. They want to pick their GMs, no problem. Now I hope we don't make a mockery of the GM head coaching search with the Rooney Rule if that would happen. But if you get those two guys, they pick their GM. So let's just preface that, all of it by saying that JoJo Wooden would be my choice. He has been with the Chargers since 2013. He has overseen their pro and college scouting departments. That team drafts and develops just about as well as anybody else. We always talk about the Chargers are so talented, but they can't get over the hump. Part of that is they're in a division with Kansas City.
But guys, let's back up. But Chargers also been picking the top 10 the last couple of years, Johnny, and they've had all these picks. It's not it's not hard,
right?
I mean, when you're picking, the middle of the pack to the end of the first round, you got to be a little bit scientific about your approach. When you got guaranteed locks of Bosa wasn't hard. You know what I mean?
Derwin James, they took Rashawn Slater in the teens. They found quality. They found they took Mike Williams in the top 10, yes, but he's worked out. They developed Keenan Allen.
They found that guy Herbert, 6'5" quarterback with a rocket arm. That was really tough to find, wasn't it? I mean, for their scouting department,
the Chargers
after two other quarterbacks were taken.
But I like Horowitz too. I think Baltimore, man, if you could copy any team's blueprint where they may not be Super Bowl contenders every year, but they're never an embarrassment. Right. And their roster always overachieves. Like, look at the Cardinals receiving core and look at what Baltimore trots out with. It's like Devin Duvernay as their number one receiver, and they're able to score more points than Arizona.
Right.
Those are the two franchises. Absolutely. They're just buttoned up.
I think that, Baltimore, you got New Orleans, you've got KC. Now, of course, KC has Mahomes, but I think Andy Reid has a track record, and Kansas City has a track record of their team is also in a really good spot roster-wise, but also you can add to that equation or that conversation, San Francisco. San Francisco for the last couple of years, just quarterback away, roster-wise, they're right there. And I love what Carthen does there. Rand Carthen, who's their director of player personnel, a guy who works with John Lynch. I think that would be a great option for the Arizona Cardinals, and guy that's familiar with the NFC West. He knows what you're up against as far as the three other teams in this division. And if it's a package deal, if it's Carthen and D'Amico Ryan, sign me up. I think that would be a great consolation prize if you miss out on the big name like Sean Payton. I agree with what both you guys said. I think if those guys want to handpick it, and I think that's how you incentivize big names, especially like Sean Payton, as they look from the outside looking into this franchise, what would be appealing, you have to give the power. But if you're looking at a coordinator, the hottest coordinator, D'Amico Ryans, and then you can take somebody right out of that front office. And we love to stack it. Fantasy football, we love it. We love the quarterback, wide receiver stack. Let's do it with the head coach and GM for the Arizona Cardinals.
And guys, also look at, Bo, to piggyback off that, if you look at Robert Saleh's, questionable success, right? That defense has been playing at a high level. Granted, he's had some great defensive line picks that he inherited, coach taking over that Jets job. But if D'Amico Ryans can bring that philosophy to the Arizona Cardinals, make them instant competitors and the defensive unit, make them a reality, I mean, for sure. I like that as well.
Geez, D'Amico Ryan, you got Carthen, and then you bring in like a Jalen Carter. I mean, now we got some grease that we're cooking with here.
Yeah, and I don't want this to come off as we're anti-internals, but we just keep your options open
for the sake of discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like you should interview lots and lots of people for this. And it sounds like, per the CBS report from Jonathan Jones, fantastic article. I'd encourage you to go read it. Michael Bidwell already starting to do his due diligence. We're going to talk about Cliff Kingsbury here in a second, but I want to remind everybody, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PHNX. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game. Get $150 in free bets if they do. So basically, I told everybody to use the promo code yesterday. I was sweating it out because it's not the spread, mind you. It's the money line. And I said, everybody, go bet on Kansas City. You place a $5 bet, get $150 in free bets if you do. Now, thankfully, it worked out if you haven't done that yet. But what I will say is that went overtime, and I was sweating it out. But we enjoy our sweats on DraftKings because, if gambling was easy, it wouldn't be as fun as it is. But now everything is fun on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. If you missed our post-game show yesterday, first of all, shame on you. Our DraftKings King of the Game. Hopefully not for the last time, but we'll see. One J.J. Watt with his 3-sack performance. So congratulations again, J.J., our DraftKings King of the Game against the Denver Broncos.
Conveniently asked for a random drug test today after his 3-sack performance. James Conner, who's had 2 good performances as well, told us today that he's been drug tested randomly the last 2 weeks as well. So, yeah, way to go, NFL. Way to keep everybody honest. Also, more good things here from PHNX. We got the PHNX Inaugural Tea Party presented by Four Peaks. We love Four Peaks. We love golf. We love Suns basketball. It's at Dobson Ranch Golf Course. You got to check this out. It's the PHNX Tea Party. You got the Suns podcast watch party. You got food, you got drink, you've got merch, you got contests, you got prizes. Go out there, show off your golf game, and enjoy some great times, great food, great booze. $45 per person, but you can save some money if you're a diehard. It's just $36 for diehards. It's only $160 for a foursome, $120 for diehards. Kids 10 and under, they play for free. Great place to bring the family for a good time and watch some basketball, play some golf. Can't get any better than the PHNX Tea Party coming up in January 13th, 5:30 at Dobson Ranch Golf Course.
All right. Can't wait for that. Can't wait for this discussion because I've been waiting for it all day. And I want to preface all this by saying that I'm a little disappointed in the national media because right now I have to defend the Arizona Cardinals and this potential opening because the national media keeps taking shots like the Cardinals can't fire Cliff Kingsbury because this job is toxic. It's an embarrassment. I'm sorry. They have one home win in a calendar year. Usually when things aren't going well, you get rid of the people that are either partially or fully responsible. And while Steve Keim built this team, Cliff Kingsbury has been coaching it and developing it for the last 4 years. And they have one home victory in that span, 13 months. So for all the information that you guys see out there, just take it with a big fat grain of salt when people say, God, if they got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, that would be a terrible move because no one wants this job. Bullshit. There's 32 NFL jobs. Michael Bidwell can write the fattest check possible. You can give him a bunch of power. You get the right GM. They ought to be able to court whomever they want.
Johnny, can I play devil's advocate real quick?
Do it.
Just real quick. Okay. Well, with that being said, they've played the most amount of players, right? Yeah. They've had 10 offensive line, different lineups. D-Hop was out for the first 6 games. Hollywood Brown was in and out. Kyler Murray got injured. So, I mean, it hasn't all been Cliff Kingsbury, right?
No,
it hasn't all been Cliff Kingsbury.
But this package that we were sold of Keim and Cliff, it's run its course. I think for most Cardinal fans, for this show, Keim is already on his way out. We assume.
Is the argument, guys, that he hasn't been able to develop the players that they have.
100%. He can't. Bo says it
Okay.
all the time. He can't elevate people.
I think that there's now. I feel like it was tough a year ago. If you were building the case, if you were in the court of law and you had a jury of your peers, 12 people, and you had the evidence and it was presented to them for Cliff Kingsbury, should he stay or should he go, it would be a slam dunk. He's staying. But now when you see it, when you look at the home record, when you look at just Kyler Murray taking a step back, the offense just completely falling off a cliff, I think there's no pun there. I think that the Arizona Cardinals, they can make the case. It should be without reasonable doubt that they should move off of Cliff Kingsbury.
Do you take into account, guys, of any of the injuries, or is it?
Yeah,
just
you do. I think you take all the variables into it, but then you got to see how your coach faces adversity and whether or not he can elevate. Like, I don't think people are going to probably think that this is a bad opinion, but I think that Cliff Kingsbury is a good coach. But I think there's a ceiling to that. They hit that ceiling and then they fell down the stairs. I mean, and they're as far from where they were last year. And that part of that was coaching. A big part of that was coaching.
I'll double down with my counterpart here, Bo Brock, and say I think Cliff, in the right circumstance, can win again. I just think this team needs a new voice. They are not responsive right now. They have no identity. You watch a Cardinal game every Sunday, looks the same from a losing standpoint, but nothing that they do well they can build on. And so that's disappointing. Last year at this time, you talk about him going to Seattle and winning in San Francisco.
They're 5-14 over the last 19 games.
Guys, don't be surprised.
It's a production business.
Don't be surprised if there's a GM change, but there's no head coaching change.
Well, I know we've talked about it ad nauseum. This was from Benjamin Albright on Twitter. He's pretty tapped in. I've had a chance to interview Benjamin in the past. We're hoping to connect with him at the NFL Combine. Getting asked, do you think Cliff Kingsbury gets the axe? He says, seems likely at this point with the Keim situation. It's an opportunity, and Bo, you've used that word, to reset an organization that probably needs it. Absolutely. Why do you want to carry over baggage from the last regime? You don't. And so I think that to give everybody a clean slate, I mean, goodness, they could win a game in the final three, but if they don't, they'll be 4-13. And these last couple games could look really bad, especially if Trace McSorley's playing.
And guys, only reason why I say that it's going to be a unique situation in finding a head coach that can, just vibe with Kyler Murray's skill set, because everyone doesn't have that ability, right, to come in and adapt like they did with Lamar Jackson. Every offensive coordinator doesn't have that mind where they think that everyone's supposed to be more like Justin Herbert, right? 6'5", 6'2 plus, and have the ability of a hand cannon and has some athletic ability, but what is most known for standing in the pocket and delivering the ball on timing routes. Kyler Murray is a unique player in that you have to be creative, although that he can create, but you have to be creative in ways that you can highlight his athletic ability. And I think that that's going to be it's just going to take a unique coach. Not that Cliff isn't or is getting the job done. I would just say up to this point, every year you're evaluated. It's what have you done for me lately? And it hasn't been much. So I understand the discourse and the conversations relating to, him staying as a head coach. However, I just know, guys, that given Kyler Murray's skill set, given the athletes, I think it's, the athletes that they have around him, I think that it's a sexy, offer. However, once you take a step back, you have to really think about, how can I highlight this kid's ability, and am I the right guy to do that? And I think Michael and company, whoever that GM is, going to have to make a really, tough decision trying to evaluate who is the right guy to highlight Kyler's abilities.
Yeah, and I think Kyler remains, a selling piece, a piece that will sell out coaches on this organization. I think that I still believe that. But as far as the rest of it, the points that Carson Palmer was making on, was it the 33rd team? He joined Trey Wingo and was saying that, all the dysfunction is going to, just pretty much tell any GM candidate or head coach candidate that they shouldn't touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I apologize.
Correct.
Wholeheartedly disagree with that. As far as, this team in 2019, yes, that was true. I mean, they were one and done. The roster was in shambles. They were, they didn't have a quarterback. 2018 was probably a little bit better, but not great. They still didn't have a quarterback at that time. 2013, when they went for BA, they didn't have a quarterback. They have a quarterback now. That's a big part of this. But look, the biggest part here is Michael Bidwell, the owner, can't waffle on any more of these decisions. Like, Steve Keim has to be done. Done. Like, there has to be no question of whether or not he can come back into this organization in any capacity. Like, he has to move off of Steve Keim. That has to be he has to be convicted in that. He has to move forward, because if he does, if he walks back a little bit, people will see that and like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this. But if he moves off of it and he gets a new Steve Keim successor, a new GM in there, this organization slowly, there's a couple more things they have to do, but gets back into the realm of appealing to potential head coach candidates.
And like, how quickly we forget to San Francisco, after they had the falling out with Jim Harbaugh, had Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly, and everybody thought Jed York was a fucking buffoon. Yeah. And they said nobody touched San Francisco. Kaepernick flamed out, depending on who you ask. That franchise was in disarray, and they ended up being able to secure Kyle Shanahan. Why?
Because it's still like a heritage franchise, though. I mean, it's like one of the big.
But they wrote a big check, and they said, Kyle, pick your GM, and you're going to be able to implement your scheme and do what you want to do here. Now, I get it. It's a bigger market, bigger selling point, but like, they were considered semi-toxic. They had gone from 3 coaches in 3 years.
Yeah.
Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly were both fired in like an 18-month span or 24-month span, and Harbaugh had bailed on them. So it's just, to me, it just depends on the time of year. This stuff is cyclical. Like, the Cardinals, are they historically kind of a little bit dysfunctional? Sure, they haven't won a Super Bowl. But I mean, like, look at how we were perceiving Seattle last offseason. They were going to go into this lengthy rebuild, and they were a joke, and they had turned their back on Russell Wilson. And then they rallied around that, and they said, no, let us prove you wrong. Michael hires the right people. All this is just outside noise. But that's assuming, ladies and gentlemen, that he fires Cliff Kingsbury. And speaking of fired head coaches, I want to show you what we believe could be trending toward potential NFL coaching changes and how that could affect the Cardinals and their ability to add somebody else. So here are the projected vacancies right now for NFL head coaches as we get down to Black Monday on January 9th. Matter of time, I do believe. Well, we already have openings in both Carolina and Indianapolis. Anybody, I'm sorry for the Jeff Saturday fans in here. I don't think he's keeping that job. Despite winning on Sunday, Nathaniel Hackett, our friends at DMVR, it feels like that's, going to be a one and done. And then Cliff Kingsbury, say a hope and a prayer. If you hope Cliff Kingsbury is back, we'll see. But then you go down to trending that way. Houston Texans, number 1 pick. Could they move off of Lovie Smith? 50-50, I've heard. Dennis Allen. What's going on in New Orleans? They have no direction. They won this weekend, but they could easily be a 6-win team at the end of the year. And then our guy Todd Bowles in Tampa, that situation just does not look right, despite the fact that they're probably going to win the putrid NFC South. And then you look at the sleepers. Could Sean McVay take a year off, step away? What's going on with Arthur Smith? He's gotten to start Desmond Ridder. That has not looked good. Kevin Stefanski, right? I know they won this weekend, but they could pivot off of him. Bill Belichick, will he retire? And then the 2 at the end are the biggest wild cards, because I think this is really where the Sean Payton saga picks up. Can Brandon Staley win a playoff game? Is that going to be enough just getting to the playoffs? Same with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys, they're going to the playoffs. But if they're one and done, does Jerry get impatient and fire him? So there are my tiers for the NFL vacant coaching rankings, potentially, maybe, sort of. Your thoughts on that, gentlemen? You like what you see?
I do. Yeah, I think he did a really good job on that. I mean, I don't disagree.
But you guys think that Wilkes will be gone in Carolina? Think it's a done deal?
No, but I think that
that ownership, the GM, it just seems like even when they have a good thing, sometimes it's not enough for them.
I think he could be kept as the DC, Damien.
They shoot from the hip way too often. I think Steve Wilkes has made his case, no doubt about it, and then some.
Right,
and
likewise,
absolutely deserves an interview, and should be kind of, it's his job to lose depending on who the candidates are. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that he's in the interim, and we'll see. They're gonna probably open up the search and talk to some people, and we'll just kind of see what happens. But I think it's his to lose. But let's put that tier list back up, if you don't mind, Jacob. Just kind of look back at this and break it down a little bit more. And like, who are the true threats to the Arizona Cardinals as far as trying to get the best candidate available? I mean, and we know, and they're in the sleeper tier. aren't they?
Yeah, I would
right
say
there?
Dallas and Chargers for sure.
That's
Dallas and
why I don't
Chargers
buy
for
this
sure.
bullshit that the Cardinals, this job is toxic and nobody wants it. Like, look at those other teams that are up there. Half of those teams don't have their first round pick. Like,
And when hasn't Dallas
been
been toxic? Why don't people say that about Dallas? I mean, if you don't win, you're pretty much gone. And what control do you have when your owner is talking about every decision that's made, from his POV? I mean, like, I don't know if you're. I mean, we've been dealing with it very similarly since Parcells was the coach.
Right.
You know what I mean? Of Dallas, same issues. Every year, maybe the head coaches aren't as vocal, but Bo, to your point, I see the threats are the Chargers, Cowboys. I don't believe the Rams. I don't think anything's going to happen because I just think
unless he willingly walks away.
Fair, but I think they're too competitive for a guy that beat Megatron at Georgia Player of the Year. I don't see him just walking away, from a fight. But I think the two threats for the Arizona Cardinals for sure are the Rams and the Cowboys.
I think, in Kyler Murray, once again, he puts the Arizona Cardinals over the top, despite the fact that he could potentially miss time. And, the timelines were released and reported yesterday that are very ideal for the Arizona Cardinals. But, Russ is the quarterback for the foreseeable future in Denver. Indy doesn't have one. Carolina doesn't have one. New Orleans doesn't have one. Houston doesn't have one, and Tampa could not have one, potentially, depending on what Tom Brady does. And if you're a head coach, do you want to go to that situation that Todd Bowles has been in this entire season? Do they feel like, okay, well, I know what was missing in Tampa and I can fix it? That might be, the chance to coach the GOAT. That might be something that gets in the
He's a free agent, Bo. But he's a free agent.
For sure.
He's going to want, $45 million?
Right.
So
look at Cleveland. You want to coach Deshaun Watson and that shitstorm that's coming up? You
want to
follow
Cleveland.
That's not toxic. That's not toxic.
Right.
John.
Right.
You want to follow Bill Belichick? That
That's not
roster's in
toxic.
disarray. I mean, like, I thought it was important today, despite all this outside garbage and noise. Like, is it a rough time to be an Arizona Cardinal fan? Absolutely. But then look at that list and then just sit back and say, well, yeah, they should be pretty competitive for somebody to want to come take this over, especially you get to live in Phoenix. You get a fat check, right? Hopefully you're buddies with the GM and Michael Bidwill stays out of the way. You could be sitting here next year with Kyler Murray back and a team that's competing.
You could buy Cliff's house.
Maybe get a studio apartment to start. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Your family setup is, but
there are some things that you can do to fumble this. As far as the organization, the Cardinals organization. They are in the driver's seat. Like every offseason, there's a team that among the at the top of the shit heap it looks like the most appealing head coaching opening. Like, what any head coach that's available is going to say that's where you want to go, right? Because they got the quarterback, they got a few stars, but it's going to come down to Michael Bidwill right now has to be creating these lists. He has to be, pretty much recruiting the Arizona Cardinals if he's made the decision to move off of Cliff Kingsbury. Because if you drag your feet, and you start letting some of these teams kind of get into the mix, the best thing they could do potentially is get a new coach in here before teams start getting knocked off and out of the playoffs, like by the divisional round or by the conference championship week. Because if you do that, teams like Dallas, teams like LA, we'll see if they survive, wild cards. And that's probably where, because realistically, if McCarthy goes to the divisional round and loses or Staley loses, that's where a potential head coach can be like, you make the playoffs and you're not even deemed successful. I don't want to go to that situation. It's a lose-lose.
And both of those divisions, it's crazy to say the NFC East and then certainly the AFC West are incredibly, incredibly competitive. Like Denver is going to try to get their shit together. And then you look at everything else going on in the NFC East with the fact that the Commanders are competitive without a quarterback. The Giants are just going to get better.
Eagles.
Here's your selling point right now is you've got a division, the NFC West. Yeah, San Francisco is a juggernaut, but they don't have a quarterback of the future, we don't think. The Seahawks have really leveled out. If the Seahawks didn't sweep the Cardinals, and of course the Cardinals should have taken care of business, Seahawks are just kind of a footnote this year. They're under 500. They're barely 500 now. I think we've overvalued their talent. And then the Rams, the chickens are coming home to roost with the fact that they sold off all their picks. You've got an opportunity here, assuming Kyler Murray rebounds from this ACL, to have the best quarterback in the division with money to spend and draft picks to use. To me, if you just put all the other garbage aside and say, I trust the GM that I'm paired with, this is an opening that I can work with.
So I was looking at the Arizona Cardinals' potential schedule for next year. You can see most of their opponents. They're going to play the NFC East. They're going to play the AFC North. And they're going to play their teams, obviously, in their division. And then there's the 3 teams that they would match up, because if the Rams lose tonight, they'll be back in 4th place. Right now, the Cardinals are a placeholder. They're likely going to be 3rd place. They would play the 3rd place team from the NFC South, which is the New Orleans Saints. That'd be a nice little. I mean, is that not a primetime game next year? Sean Payton taking on his former team. Are the stars not aligning there?
I think Denver and the Rams play next weekend. Do they not? So I think we should be rooting for the Rams to get one more win. I want the Cardinals to have a 4th place schedule next year. I think the Cardinals have earned that. And so I would like to see the Rams win some games.
No. What about the draft pick, though?
We're going to get to the draft pick here in a second. Well, I mean, listen, would you take one spot in the draft or a 4th place schedule? I don't know. That's tough. That's a tough sell. But we're going to get to the – go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm going with the higher draft pick.
Yeah,
Gimme.
I agree. Yep.
All right. We're going to talk about the draft here in a second. I had a draft recently on the Underdog Fantasy app. It didn't go well. I picked a bunch of players that got hurt. But the good news is, unlike year-long fantasy, where I had to eat a big shit sandwich with Cam Akers for the entire year, I can pivot and redraft the next day, because Underdog Fantasy is the best version of daily fantasy. All you got to do, draft your team against up to 5 of your buddies, and the highest scoring squad for the night wins that sweet, sweet, cold, hard cash. And it's not just specific to the NFL, folks. You can draft up to 6 NBA players with absolutely no positional limits. That is it. Go nuts. Will Devin Booker hit his higher or lower on the evening? Of course, hit that higher. It's super, super easy to get started, friends. All you got to do, you got to go to UnderdogFantasy.com, or you got to download the app. You got to use that promo code PHNX. And guess what? Underdog Fantasy is going to match your first deposit up to $100. It's free money. You can bet on it and prosper using the Underdog Fantasy app. Of course, promo code PHNX is going to get you that free hundy. Get in on the action today. I like Baker Mayfield's under for tonight. Don't think he's going to have a big game. I absolutely love Cam Akers tonight, though, because the Packers' run defense is not any good. So I'm going to double down on my Cam Akers love just for the night. So check out Underdog Fantasy. You will not be sorry that you did.
Fool me once, shame on shame
Fool
on
me
you.
5
Fool me
times.
twice. Don't get fooled again, my friends. Nice job, Johnny. Way to double down, triple down on Cam Akers. Let's play some more fantasy, like play GM with your furniture, your living room. You can make the decisions there. And the Underdog Fantasy of the furniture world, more furniture. That's right. They're going to make your living room, your bedroom, your dining room, wherever it may be that you need some help, and you can kind of bolster your roster of furniture. More Furniture is going to hook you up. And right now they got the holiday clearance events happening pretty much through Christmas. You can save up to 50% off. Go to morefurniture.com. That's More Furniture, M-O-R, furniture.com. And I got to tell you, on that Underdog Fantasy app tonight, the only way you can spruce up this Suns game tonight is probably getting and dabbling on Underdog. No Devin Booker and potentially no DA. No LeBron, right? All right.
Yep.
Let's get back to football.
No interest in answering that, Bo.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Listen, the Suns need to get Devin Booker some help. I think we all can agree on that. The Cardinals need some help of their own in the form of a top 5 draft pick. And check out our fancy new NFL draft graphic from producers extraordinaire Emma and Jacob. Hot damn, look at that. And check out old number 4 and 10 Arizona Cardinals. They are neck and neck for a top 3 pick with the Denver Broncos, who of course have to jet set it to the Seattle Seahawks. You hate to see that, but you love to see Arizona in striking distance for that top 3 draft pick, which I believe guarantees you either Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. That you're sitting pretty there. You get to number 3, you're guaranteed an SEC standout, a stalwart to rebuild what I think has become a soft ass front seven, gentlemen.
Get Carter. Let's get the hashtag going.
Yeah, I mean, but guys, I mean, if you look at what it takes to be competitive in the NFC West, you gotta, take care of the trenches, and that's defensive line. I mean, with the abysmal, production that we've seen from the defensive line, two sacks? No guy has more than 2 sacks at that outside linebacker position. So it's obviously a need there. If you could get Anderson or Carter, that's going to be a huge improvement for this defensive line. But hopefully they're aggressive as well, addressing this offensive line, because what does it matter if you have Kyler Murray if you can't keep him healthy, guys?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when you look at the prospects out there's some opportunities, but it was interesting. Like Myjai Sanders, somebody asked in the press conference today, like, have you seen him play a better game? And then I look at his snap count, and he played 11 snaps, and Cameron Thomas played 10. And they're not playing.
So glad that we're getting Victor Dumakaji these critical snaps at the end.
We're seeing Dennis Gardeck out snap their young guys, and I'm looking forward to with change.
I mean, whatever it was, it worked the first half, guys.
It did. And what Myjai Sanders had that strip sack, right? Or he
so glad to see Greg Dortch not play for AJ Green to get those vital snaps.
Right,
by the way,
right. JJ Watt had the strip sack. Sorry, but I mean, there's so many with the quarterback class, the quarterback needy teams being where they are. Like it's just the stars are aligning for the Arizona Cardinals to get an absolute just baller. Like no questions asked. Like it's not like, hey, what position's he going to play? It's like, no, it's a defensive lineman. Like it's going to be a game wrecker in Jalen Carter out of the SEC, a national champ. A true, like his x-ray shows the dog in his chest, and then you've got a guy like Will Anderson coming from Alabama. You can't go wrong with Bama in that in defense. I mean, I think that'd be slam dunks for the Arizona Cardinals, and there'd be no questions asked. Like these guys are going to come out of the draft class and play immediately and make an impact, something that we just haven't seen outside of Kyler Murray for far too long.
I mean, if you're going to get a guy like a Bosa type player, no question. I think because you've seen, both brothers, how they've impacted the football game when they're on the field. And I think when you have a difference maker, that's everything. It has that cascade effect. It's going to help your linebackers. It's going to help your secondary. And it's someone that they have to pay attention to. The Arizona Cardinals, unfortunately, didn't have anybody that the opposing offense had to pay attention to. Like, we're whatever we want to do, we can do and do well. But I think Jalen Blair in the chat said, address the offensive lineman, in terms of free agency and maybe find a center. I agree with that, but definitely if you could get a guy that is a game changer, whether that be Anderson or Carter, like Bo said, get Carter, no question.
You're going to have a good pick. You're going to have a high pick in the second round. I think that is potentially center, like where you can find a center, right?
I just don't want to recognize this team next year. I'm with all due respect, Ben Neiman, goodbye. Dennis Gardeck, goodbye. Marcus Golden, I love you. You've been a great Cardinal. Goodbye. It's time to move on, especially defensively, with about 75% of the guys. The only untouchables for me, of course, Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, I think are kind of the anchors for your secondary moving forward. Byron Murphy's, let me down. I think if he were to come back on a reasonable contract, that's one thing. But you can't miss a third of the season and expect us to, in a rebuild right now with the Cardinals, pay big for you. And then, I look at the linebackers, of course, Zaven and Isaiah, you bring them back, and then the rookies. But the front seven, the defensive line needs a complete revamp. I would pay Zach Allen the market price, but I wouldn't go crazy. Then on the flip side, they need to get exponentially tougher. This is a soft offense that is built on aging veterans on the offensive line that have let you down, that are collecting checks on the side and not playing, and then a bunch of undersized skill players outside of James Conner and Trey McBride. To me, it's just you cut your dead weight, you take your lumps with some rookies and some young players next year, and you let them grow and develop. I am so over this team overpaying for people and begging them to either come out of retirement or play. Like this, the biggest thing that I think right now is going to hamper guys like Rondell Moore and company, you have to play. You can be bad and play early on and work through it. Like, I'll give Hassan Reddick credit. Like, he was played out of position, but he was always around, and he got better and better, and they mismanaged his development, and they're going to be haunted by that for a long time. But like what this specific group, Keim and Kingsbury, failed to do, one of their worst mistakes was They did not allow young players to fail early, to grow and develop and get better. San Francisco has patience with young players. The Cardinals' lack of patience was astounding to me. Jordan Hicks, I love him to death. Isaiah Simmons should have been playing 100% of the snaps from day one. And they did him a disservice. And the poor guy, it's probably hampered with his mindset, his development. Zaven Collins should have played 100% of the snaps in year 2.
But Johnny, they weren't that good around him in order for him to play. They would have been that much more worse because he didn't know.
Then the expectations were too high. Then I'm sorry, or the coaching staff was not good enough. If you can't take a first round pick and say between September and November you're going to get better, like the snap counts Bo just read are sickening for a team that's 4-10. And you're not playing your 2 third-round pass rushers, who, by the way, look fantastic and spared playing time. Thank God Trey McBride, albeit through injury, we're not happy about Zach Ertz going down, gets to finally showcase his abilities, had a career-high 50-plus yards yesterday, finally look like an NFL player. Like this franchise, to me, GM, head coach combination that comes in, you need to play your young players. We need to see early so then we can stamp it and say, extend, move on, extend. Not Byron Murphy, year 4, he's been injured. What do? We're screwed.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you always need to play them until you evaluate, but I think you can't compare apples to oranges, right? If you look at these other teams like San Francisco or some of these teams that have been comparative, they're better football teams, right? They have a lot of depth, a lot of veteran leadership around these guys, right? Where they could put them in and they could afford to have mistakes right on the back end, or afford to have a linebacker miss a tackle because you got 2 great safeties or other opposing, other linebackers at positions to come in and make those plays. I think when you look at the Arizona Cardinals, they couldn't afford early on to play these guys because it would be glaring holes in their defense. You saw when you moved off Jordan Hicks and early on when you played Isaiah Simmons and teams were having a field day rushing the football, right?
Well,
because he wasn't fitting in the right gaps or he just needed that experience. And we talked about that. And he's gotten better, to your point, Johnny, with the more experience he's had.
But I'm just going to push back on like, are you a good teacher or not? Because I'm sorry, these players are 5-star players. They're the highest rated players at the collegiate level. They're not coming from Division III. Most teams can plug and play. The Cardinals are the worst team in the NFL at developing young players.
We talked about with Seattle having 2 starting tackles and a starting running back and getting
and they're not and if they have bad games, they have bad games.
Yeah. Let's put the pressure on though. Let's not get out of here and not pick which player we would take if both of them were able to fall into the Arizona Cardinals' lap. Jalen Carter, the interior defensive lineman from Georgia, or Will Anderson, the edge rusher at Alabama. Cardinals are on the clock. Both are on the board. Who do the Arizona Cardinals take?
I think you re-sign Zach Allen and you take Will Anderson.
But has Zach Allen helped? I mean, the run defense has struggled the last couple of years. I mean, when you look at where the Broncos were able to get right yesterday, and I know Zach Allen wasn't a part of that, but that defensive line was a wrecking crew of the first half. They get 6 sacks, then they're held to 1 sack, and Latavius Murray's turning back the clock 5 years. He's rushing for over 100 yards, and they're combating the Arizona Cardinals pass rush. Like, you need that guy on the inside, right? You need Jalen Carter to set the tone.
There's not a wrong answer. I think
you need an answer right now.
I'm going to answer.
You got to hand in the card. Johnny.
Okay, I'm going to answer right now. It's Jalen Carter for me, and here's why. This franchise has had prominent edge rushers the last couple of years. It hasn't helped with the run defense, and it stops with stopping the run. I look at a team, guys, like Kansas City. They don't have a great outside pass rush, but they have the man in the middle that the Cardinals coincidentally passed on for Robert Nkemdiche. In Chris Jones. I think your 3-5 technique sets the tone for your defense. And it also will help exponentially the development of Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins. And I also do think that the cupboard is not bare at outside linebacker. If I had to go into next year with Myjai Sanders and Cameron Thomas, I would feel better about it than what I have to work with at the defensive line. Because to Bo's point, Zach Allen, to me, has not been able to stay healthy. And I think he might be a little bit overvalued on this team right now. Whereas Jalen Carter, captain, ass kicker, winner. Again, both are fantastic. It's like 1A and 1B. It's like me being able to pick between my kids, really. That's what you're asking me?
That's great.
I would go with the defense, the disrupting defensive lineman, and try to find a pass rush elsewhere. This team has not had a capable defensive lineman, young and homegrown, since Calais Campbell. That's too long.
And he could potentially be a back-to-back NCAA champion coming in to your organization, bring
in people's space, calm people soft.
Gonna sell some tickets for sure.
There's not a wrong answer though, but the only wrong answer is not taking either of them. I mean, which can't put it past.
There's rumblings. I heard there's rumblings from a source that we may trade back and get two middle linebackers.
Don't do that to me. I can't stop. We're celebrating today.
It's a source.
We're celebrating.
It's a source.
How about that Chop Shop, Bo? We got some Chop Shop in the house at PHNX, the PHNX headquarters. It was fantastic.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Chop Shop either. I mean, Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, you can't go wrong with all the things on the menu at Chop Shop. I love the barbecue chicken salad. Don't hate on me for that. You can't go wrong with a barbecue chicken salad. They got great sandwiches. Couple of their chicken sandwiches are phenomenal. You get some of the forbidden rice bowls there. The Korean steak bowl there is unreal. Chop Shop, it's right by the Cardinals facility. I eat there probably 3 times a week. My wife hates me for it because she makes me lunches and I throw them in the trash can because I go to Chop Shop because it's delicious. It's legit.
You did the Chandler Jones stiff arm to her lunch.
You can find locations all around the valley at Chop Shop, the original Chop Shop. Of course, Old Town. You got it there in Chandler by the facility. You got it downtown now. You can find a location by you. The one in the OG one in Old Town Gilbert. So check them out. Of course, the original Chop Shop. And thank you for the lunch today, Chop Shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick James, this is a podcast that is not anti-running back, but certainly is anti-running back in the top 10 for the Arizona.
Let me tell you something. Bijan Robinson is a great running back, but if you're 4th overall, you just can't do it. It's like those days. Our GM Saul Bookman, who of course loves Bijan Robinson, of course, because of his hometown is Tucson, if I'm not wrong, correct? But also he had a pass rush or pass block grade under 50 at the college level. Damien, I think you need to be able to block a little bit at the running back position if you're going to be.
You definitely have to be able to protect the quarterback. And anytime that you're giving him over $230 million, that's going to be a premium. Like Bijan, very familiar with his game. He's a great player. I mean, the Cardinals could, use the talent, but there's other glaring holes on this team, that being defensive line, outside linebacker that they need to fill. I mean, it'd be great story, but there's other pressing needs for the Arizona Cardinals.
Just to clarify, I love Bijan Robinson. Hell no to drafting him in the top 5. Not a chance. Okay. I just saw on the record, no Bijan in the top 5.
All right.
Thank God.
Loves him as a prospect. He's going to be a baller next year.
Great kid. Love him to death.
Grown-ass man running the football.
I mean, would you want him on your team? Absolutely. And if the Cardinals had 3 first-round picks, that'd be a different
James
story.
James Conner, who we talked to today, he's locked in next year. Like, there's no wiggle room there. It would cost the Cardinals close to $10 million to get. I don't think
it's a bad thing to have him on the team next year.
No, it's not bad. James Conner's last 5 games has been really good.
Like
James Conner, when you look at the film, he's one of the only guys that you see fighting. And I mean, granted, I know that we get snippets of it. We're watching it on television. It's not the wide and tight view of the coach's film, but he's one of the guys that are fighting for every yard. Like you said, playing for respect out there every Sunday, and you could tell.
I mean, he's not small, and that's next year. The offensive theme should be outside of Kyler Murray, get bigger and more physical, and he encapsulates that. So absolutely, you can check out our phenomenal Arizona Cardinal, PHNX Cardinal beat reporter Howard Balzer at gophnx.com. Slam the promo code Howard, HOWARD. He's got a banger of an article recapping yesterday's game, where the Cardinals go from here, as well as some timeline information pertaining to Kyler Murray's injury. It's crazy, guys. We did a Monday show, barely talked about whatever that was yesterday in an effort to look forward. We're going to continue to look forward here at PHNX Cardinals, the PHNX Cardinals podcast. You should look forward to a membership at gophnx.com. Become a diehard today, 20% off all events, merchandise. Hang out in the exclusive member Discord with myself, Bo Brock. Vent about this team. We're in it constantly to be able to talk about the changes that are necessary. But the only way to do it is to become a diehard member today. Cop a free shirt or hat for the year, and then you get another one next year. It's not a one-off. You can pick up this celebratory tee. You can be a company man. Look at Bo Brock, company man, t-shirt, hat combo. Look at that. You want to be a company man like Bo, or just have a good time with us? Check out the PHNX merchandise locker today, Bo.
Absolutely. You can't go wrong there. That's going to do it for us today. Of course, check out our great podcast, PHNX Suns, tonight. They'll tell you who's actually going to be in the lineup tonight. And our friends over at PHNX Coyotes. You guys have a great rest of your Monday. We will talk to you live again on Wednesday at 4. And then we got our Hard Knocks recap after that. See you.